welcome to episode 38 of Soul Quest. We are so excited today because we have an amazing guest, Jake Sasseville.
You did it.
I said his name correctly.
It's lovely to be here, you guys. I have a ton of respect for both of you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks,
Well, we've been watching you on Instagram, and I'm like, we need to interview this guy that we're going to be going to his institute, his amazing place, and hosting a retreat. And like, how did this guy enter our life? For a reason, obviously. We can't wait to meet you in person. But yes, Jake is the CEO of Imiloa Institute in Costa Rica, where we will be holding our Be the Change retreat in March, which we're super excited about. Can't wait to just soak up and just immerse ourselves in the food and the people and the nature,
the jungle and the house, and everything just seems so
yeah. So we definitely want to hear the story of how you got there. But how about we start with your childhood, because this is Soul Quest is all about your journey and your challenges and celebrations along your journey, and how you can share that story with others and maybe inspire someone, teach somebody something. How about your childhood?
How about that childhood? It is, honest to goodness, Sharon, it is only recently that I've really started to recognize how traumatic my childhood was, to be honest with you. And I think that for so many years, I would say things that would kind of defend my parents or make it okay that they were doing the best that they were doing. And I've recently been engaging in a therapy, which I love. By the way, I hope your listeners like when people just go in, because I just kind of go in.
Oh yeah, we love it.
I love it.
So there's this therapy that my friend actually is one of the proteges. So there's a guy named Dr. Gabor Mate. And Gabor Mate is in his 80s now and developed a system for therapy called compassionate inquiry. Yeah. And it's taking hold. And my friend down here in Costa Rica, one of my dearest friends, is actually one of his 27 mentors or mentees, I guess it would be. And so I've been following her journey. And recently I've been exploring compassionate inquiry, which basically looks at there's the experience, there's the emotion of the experience, and then there's underneath that's where the real trauma lies. And in fact, they've redefined trauma for me, this group, Chiara and Gabor Mate, trauma being an experience that we have without a host. So it's not the actual experience, it's the absence of someone to be able to host whatever happens in that experience.
Interesting.
And that has radically shifted how I look at what has occurred in my life. In any case, my childhood on the outside was, I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks in Lewiston, Maine, a mill town. I had hardworking parents and grandparents who made about $20,000 or $30,000 a year. My mom and dad were divorced when I was 6. And what I've learned through compassionate inquiry and looking back at that is, again, it's not about the divorce, right? That was what happened. It's about what I made it mean about me. Yeah. What I made it mean about me. Just like anything that happens to us, it's not actually what happened to us. It's what we make it mean about ourselves. And do we continue carrying that on into our, adult years? In any case, so I grew up in Maine, and not on the coast where everybody comes to vacation. And, my childhood was decent. I went to a Catholic school, which was very strict, and I ended up going to a public high school. And when I was a freshman in high school, my brother was diagnosed with leukemia, which is a form of blood cancer, childhood blood cancer. And over the next few years, he obviously fought it, and my parents were very focused on that with him. And he ended up dying when I was 17 and he was 13. So that point in my childhood and that coming of age really started to shift things for me, really caused me to start questioning, hold up, wait a minute, what the hell is this all about? Yeah.
Wow. That's intense.
Yeah, of course.
So at that point, I know there's a point where you started getting into magic. Is that when that happened, when your brother was ill?
Yeah, good memory. That's great. So Yeah, a lot of things. When my brother was ill, so it was May of 2001. I actually remember, because I remember I came home. I went to Max Hackett's house actually, and my parents said that they weren't going to be home that night. That they were doing tests with Alex in Portland, and I thought nothing of it. So I went to go sleep with my grandma's. And as this sort of started revealing itself over the next few days, what he had been diagnosed with and what he was going to go through, I kind of checked out, to be honest with you. And I started doing magic. I started performing. Wow. I started as a teen magician and found myself a mentor, which has always been the connective tissue of my life, that I've always found mentors, no matter what age. So I found a magician mentor, and I started, basically self-supporting myself at 14, doing magic shows all around the Northeast. Yeah, if you can imagine, like $300-400 a show back in 2001 as a 14-year-old. Wow. It was pretty incredible. And then I went into TV and did some like local access stuff back when TV was interesting and a thing. And that started my career in entertainment, that I followed through my 20s. But yeah, in addition to magic, I also moved to France for my junior year of high school by myself. I was just like, I got to get out of this. So yeah, my life has been a lot about like, oh, can I stay in it long enough to like see myself through it? And the answer in the early part of my life was not really. As I started to realize that, though, I've been able to be with myself, my feelings, my experiences a whole lot more, and life is a lot richer as a result. And in many ways, Imiloa is my greatest pain turned into my purpose, which I think is kind of a beautiful thing. And I've really experienced it as a beautiful thing, meaning, not really having a stable home. And it's not because my parents were crazy. I just want to underscore that. Like, some people go through some real dysfunctional stuff. And while my household was not the most emotionally stable because of everything that was happening, anyways, it wasn't the most emotionally stable with everything that was happening.
Right.
However, it put me on this, it made things feel a little unstable. And so Imiloa being this place where people seek refuge and come home to, as an observer of my life, not the guy who's like living it, but like, oh, isn't that interesting? The connective tissue there, the connective dots. Wow. So magic was a distraction. Moving to France was a distraction. Entertaining others, making them laugh was a distraction from what was the real pain of being me back then.
Right. And so that's interesting because you didn't want to feel the pain, so you distracted yourself, but it sounds like you distracted yourself in a healthy way. I mean, with some healthier options, right? You didn't go to, what about drugs or alcohol, anything like that?
So I started drinking when I was in France. I haven't really ever done any drugs. I mean, not at all. And I ended up drinking so much through my late teens and 20s that I stopped and haven't drank since I was 21, interestingly enough. And I'm 36 now. And I remember the night that I stopped. I don't know, in hindsight, I'm not sure if the distraction to what is ever really healthy, Sharon. I know that, look, the challenge for me and where I got really lost is because I got so rewarded for it, right? I started off with the magic. Financially, it was like I'd hit gold. And then I moved to New York City, brought the TV show that I had started in Maine in New York City, launched that nationally on ABC after Jimmy Kimmel when I was 21, the youngest host in late night TV, back again when TV was a thing. So all of my trying to cover the pain was so rewarded financially and otherwise. It was stimulating. I didn't really need to look at what I hadn't been willing to look at. And so, it was good for what it was, and I'm grateful, but I prefer now to be in it rather than to be distracted from it.
Is this what you actually acquired from the therapy that you're going through or that you've been doing? Like, I mean, I remember doing something like this like 10 years ago where they made us, I went to this thing, it was like 12 hours long for 3 days. And like, they made us just like realize and think, and it was all about our childhood, things that were just on our shoulders, our whole lives, that subconsciously we didn't even, we were probably doing all these other things to just run away from the, you know, the main purpose, you know? So, I mean, when you said that, I was like, man, I kind of went through that, and I dug into myself and found a lot of things. I was like, man, that's why I do this, and that's why I do that, and that's why I've always been running and hiding from, you know, certain things. So when you explained it like that, I was like, oh man, I feel
that feels very it feels very similar. I think that, you know, this therapy is not something that I do regularly because it's so intense, but what it's taught me is not just I'm not interested in analyzing my childhood, to be honest with you. However, I am interested to see what patterns unconsciously are unfolding my adulthood that are related to that 8-year-old not getting what he needed, or that 6-year-old, whatever it was, and realizing that the action that I can take now in my adulthood is actually just stopping, quieting the monkey mind, and recognizing, oh, that came up. That's right. This is what I do when I seek attention, because it was never safe to seek attention when I was younger. And I can just, instead of trying to do whatever it is I'm about to do or thinking of doing, I can just say, oh, I can actually give the love or the nurturing or the attention to that 8-year-old. And it's a quiet process, but it's a therapy that continues long outside of a session. And in fact, I personally can't do it every week. I do it once every few months because it's that intense. But I think it's very similar. And yes, it has helped me uncover, I think of all of life as an inquiry. So really all my life has led me to this point, and I have been reflective, but I think really recognizing that I act today based on what I may not have received as a child, which I may not even know that I don't know, which is why this compassionate inquiry is so profound. But once it comes up to the surface, it's like, okay, now what do I do with it? I nurture it. And you know what? My edges are softening as a result. Things that maybe you guys or other folks who don't see me every day wouldn't even notice, but really noticeable things to me where my nervous system is just chilling out. And that has been so important to me because I have revved all my life, you know, and you guys know, you guys are in fitness, you know, when a nervous system is, and health and wellness, like when you're revving the nervous system and the adrenal fatigue that comes along with that, it's not ideal. Yeah. Right.
Wow. So this compassionate inquiry sounds similar to like inner child work.
Could be. I've not done inner child work. And I'm not you'd be surprised by this, Sharon, but I'm not a big fan of the woo-woo stuff. So I don't know a lot of the stuff that people are doing. I like grounded, practical, scientific, and emotional, spiritual. Not to say that inner child is not that. However,
I know what you mean.
You know, there's a lot of people that are glossing over stuff in the work around inner child work. And it's one of the things that, I don't know if I would have gone into this type of work had I not been friends with the person before, just because a big part of health and wellness industry I'm learning in the retreat center world and everything is just sniffing out the charlatans. It's like, who's the charlatans? Let's see, you know? Cool. Inner child work, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I've heard. I haven't done like deep inner child work, but I've done meditations and little things that are called inner child work, where you're meditating and going back in the past and like calming yourself as a child, talking to yourself as a child, and trying to give yourself what you needed back then.
Sounds very similar then in that case.
Yeah, but yours sounds a little more intense. See, I don't really do a lot of like intense stuff. Like I dabble in a lot of stuff. Do you know your human design by chance?
Is that a number?
No.
I'm trying to think because people ask me.
The 5 energy types: manifestor, generator, manifesting generator, projector, reflector. Have you?
So I think I'm a manifestor.
Okay. I am too.
I've done it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would make sense. I'm a manifestor too. And I think that it's hard for me to keep my attention on one thing at a time. I'm kind of just like, I want to try a lot of things.
Totally.
And I'm the opposite.
Yeah, he's the opposite.
Which means what?
He's a generator. So he likes to finish things, you know, like work hard on one thing. Yeah.
And they say like on a team, it's really good to have complementary different folks, obviously.
Yeah. So I definitely need a generator to help me, you know, finish tasks. So it works well.
Cool.
So, okay. So I want to know about this TV show. Like, what was the TV show about? Was it comedy, magic?
It was not magic. So I started a show. My first show, I interviewed an apartheid survivor from South Africa when I was 16 years old. And his name was Mark Matabane. And he had written a best-selling book called Kafir Boy, which I read in my sophomore honors English class.
I've heard of that, yeah.
It's an amazing book about him escaping apartheid in South Africa, fleeing to the United States on a tennis scholarship from Arthur Ashe.
Wow.
And I was so moved by this book, and was also being raised on Oprah at that point, basically, because I would go home and watch Oprah. Because my parents were in Boston because my brother was doing the transplant. So it's like I was like kind of raising myself. And so I was kind of already into the whole touchy-feely and like learning from these things and whatever, watching Oprah. And so I read this book and I was blown away. And I decided, I announced, I remember, you know how you do these silly things when you're like reading a book and they're like, well, what do you think about it? What do you think about it? Well, they asked me what I thought and I said, I'm going to bring the author to Maine and I'm going to have him on my new TV show. And the whole class erupted in laughter. And I called his agent. I was 16 years old. I called his agent in New York and I negotiated a fee. And then I called Stephen King, who's from Maine, the author from Maine. I found the number to his foundation, talked to his wife, Tabitha, and they paid for the whole thing. And all of a sudden I booked this guy on my show. And this is like 2002. So this is before like real internet and I didn't even own a computer, to be honest with you. I don't know how the hell I was doing this stuff. Anyways, 3 months later, this guy was in Maine speaking to the class, speaking to universities and doing my show. And I did this whole half-hour show. And I remember my brother's sick with cancer. My parents are MIA. The studio is full because it's like a miracle that this guy showed up in Maine. And I asked him a question about what is next for him in his life. And he talked about, I don't remember exactly, you guys, but he talked about so long as his brothers and sisters are suffering in the name of, I don't remember exactly what he said, but so long as he has brothers and sisters that are suffering in the world, his work will not be done and da-da-da. And I started to hysterically cry.
Wow.
I'm talking about like blowing my nose in his black Armani suit. I mean, it was disgusting. And I was 100 pounds heavier as well. So I was like just a big blob of gushy whiteness that, just was like so lovable, huggable, and, 100 pounds hair. And something about that moment that touched me so deeply, everybody in the studio started laughing and crying. They didn't know what to do. And then I was written about it. The thing was written about in all these newspapers and on blogs and the news agencies that were there. And I realized something at 16 years old, that the more personal something is, the more universal it is. That I got attention for being myself, granted a little bit extra, of like pouring my nose in this guy's suit. I mean, it was a real situation. But that kind of put me on a certain path. And then I went and I booked a cast of Will and Grace on my show when Will and Grace was like huge in the mid 2000s, early 2000s. I was a senior in high school, again, just running because everything was falling apart at home. So I had the cast of Will and Grace, and then I, just started going on this path of like me against the man, so to speak. So like nobody would pick up the show. So I basically put myself on the air on these Fox stations and sold advertising myself. And made a ton of money before I went to college. And then I brought the show down to New York and no agent would pick me up or talk to me. So I was like, screw all of you, I'll do it myself. I went and went to get Ford and Denny's and Red Bull and Overstock.com as advertisers. They gave me a couple of $1 million when I was 20. And then I bought my way on the air after Jimmy Kimmel. So it was Jake After Jimmy. And it was a talk show within a talk show about how a 21-year-old got his own show as the show was in progress. And I was having all these celebrities on and the exclusive. It was insane. And I just created it out of nothing. Speaking of being a manifestor, I created it out of nothing and went bankrupt 3 months after the show launched with $250,000 of debt at the age of 22. So I also got some very big learnings, shall we say. I would be at a pizza joint because I owed a lot of people a lot of money because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Everybody put their trust in a 21-year-old. It's like, what the hell do you think is going to happen? Honestly. I mean, I'm running a studio with 40 people working for a 21-year-old, and I'm running to college classes at night before I dropped out. I mean, hello, what do you think?
Oh.
But I would literally be like eating pizza. I'll never forget this in New York City, because I was in New York City. Be eating pizza, and there's places in New York City where there's like a bar, and like you can sit and kind of look outside. Maybe you don't. Well, maybe some of your listeners do, but you can actually look at like things. And I just remember eating this cheese pizza one day, and I was literally sleeping on a beanbag. Had to sell my car, like I was in the shitter. And this guy, the cab is speeding by, and one of my camera guys, really nice guy normally, just started screaming at me as he went, "Sassaville, where's my effing money?" And like, I was just like frozen in fear at the age of 22. So that was the TV show. The TV show got me a whole lot of press, and it created something very unique back when television still mattered. I was on the front page of New York Magazine. Everybody was picking it up. Youngest host in late night TV. I'm on tour with Kanye. And 3 months later, I'm getting screamed at from the back of a cab as I'm trying to eat a slice of cheese pizza and $250,000 in debt. So it was a bit of a,
Wow, that is fascinating.
Yeah, what an experience, though. But a lot of lessons to be learned there, and I'm sure you've taken them along your journey to where you are today. For sure. I mean, that's a lot of responsibility.
It was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot of learning. And I didn't learn everything that first round, Cisco, to be honest with you. I slept on a beanbag for 12 months, came back stronger than before, fell again, like had another nosedive when I was 24, 25 with my next show, did another show, had another nosedive. And that's when at 27, when my house literally got washed away by Hurricane Sandy. And so did my TV contracts and everything. And that's when I really had to live the lesson. For me, it was a rinse, wash, and repeat. And I'm sure we've all experienced it, right? When we're not ready for the lesson or we're not listening close enough, sometimes it takes, I mean, it was consistent from 21 to 27 until my life it was like, stop. And I literally faced my greatest fear after losing that house. My greatest fear was not losing the house or my money. My greatest fear was moving into my grandma's basement in Lewiston, Maine. And that's what I ended up doing.
Your greatest fear appeared to you. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so then I had to start dealing with life in a whole new way. I had to start dealing with life on life's terms. I had to start learning to live from a place of surrender, not hustle. I was supposed to be in that goddamn basement for a month, and I was there for 2 years. I started and failed at 5 businesses in that basement. Thank God the 6th one worked, but started and failed at 5 businesses. And I got into a 12-step program. I started to actually heal my life rather than just try to sell my way out of whatever shenanigans of the day that I put myself in.
Wow.
I'm just hearing my story and I'm like, this is a crazy story.
There's
a lot going on,
A lot.
I mean, that's just amazing, because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, wow, he really knows how to create something. And I've heard somebody on a podcast with similar story where they would start a business and they'd be, really successful and rich. And then all of a sudden it's like they're poor. And then they'd start a business, they'd be rich and they'd poor. It's like it's going back and forth. And so I'm just like, that's amazing that you could just get up and create something so fast, but then also, you dive bomb, you're like in the dark night of the soul after, and then you're getting up and you're creating something so fast. It's like that quickness is what's really interesting. It's how you could get up and do it again, and then you fail. But then what a lesson of like, you had to just keep failing until you got to the point where you're like, okay, so what's the lesson that you got to when you were like, okay, I got to change something? What did you feel like you had to change?
Well, to your first point, and I want to say that I'm speaking into a mirror, not from a soapbox. I'm not preaching here. I'm just speaking things that I myself probably have to hear. So anything that people receive as lessons or it's really just into a mirror. It's not about telling anyone anything. I will say that in terms of the repetitive pattern, something happened, Sharon and Cisco, when I watched my baby brother die in my parents' arms. something happened to me in that moment. And it was, oh, this could go at any moment. This is fleeting. If I just saw this with my own eyes, watching him take his last breath in my parents' arms, if that's possible, first of all, anything must be possible. And second of all, I better get going. And so that constant sort of rush was actually tremendous amount of fear exposed and catalyzed into TV shows and projects and da-da-da.
Mm-hmm.
And I never actually was with myself and how it actually felt to be me. And I think that that's what the confrontational moment was when I was 27, when I literally was in the basement. Literally. It's not like, oh, that's a funny idea. It's like, it was a basement and it had mold. And I had an electric heater, and I was flying first class the 2 months before that. And all of a sudden I'm in the basement, and I had famous friends before that. And suddenly no one's taking my calls. It was really that.
Wow.
And I think, as time went on in that basement, I recognized that, it was about it. Like I had said, it was the surrender. It was the lesson of taking action and turning the results over to a higher power. For years, I had lived in the results business. If I do this, then that, or if I do this, then I'll look like that, or da-da-da. It was all results all the time. And I think many people don't recognize how much of their day is spent focusing on a result of if then. And my life dramatically changed in that basement because I started putting myself in the action-taking business and turning the results over to God, to be honest with you. And I started to see real magic occur once I started doing that. But not immediately. It took time. And yeah.
Wow. That is amazing. An amazing lesson to have so this is your late 20s when you're living in the basement.
27, which is also apparently the first Saturn return, which is about as woo as I get.
Yeah.
So the Saturn return goes 27 to 32, 33. And so I was 2 years in that basement. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. And so from there, you're going, and it sounded like you were going through a dark night of the soul. I know you're not woo-woo, but you're going
No, that is what it is. In fact, a year and a half in, my dad had Parkinson's at this point, 20 years into Parkinson's. So I was walking him home literally, like as he transitioned during that time as well.
Wow.
And he couldn't speak very much at the end. He would like whisper talk, if you've ever known anyone with Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. And one time I was talking to him about something I was going through, and he whispered, "It sounds like you're talking about something." And I was like, "What'd you say?" He says, "It sounds like you're on your dark night of the soul." And I then was like, oh, I need to go read about whatever this is. Freaking A, I need to make meaning of this because this is insane. Like I'm in the middle of Maine during the winter, like walking knee high, like what is happening? And I read about the dark night of the soul, and everything was exactly as it was happening. Yeah.
Wow. Intense.
Yeah.
So what came out of that dark night of the soul?
5 businesses that failed, and the 6th one worked. Now remember, I'm an entrepreneur. I've collected a paycheck once when I was 18, when I needed a job in New York, and I got fired from that job 3 weeks later. So I've never gotten a paycheck. So this idea of, people would say, well, let's go get a job. It's like, no, not really. Like, I'm not going to argue with you because I'm in my grandma's basement and I'm eating because she's putting food in the fridge. So I'm not really one to argue, but there is something sexy about the clarity, people. I will tell you that. And this is where, again, speaking into a mirror, but so many people were just like, get it together, go get a job, all this stuff. And I didn't argue with them, but I also knew it wasn't my path. And I also knew I had an incredible luxury by having a grandmother that was extremely codependent and loved having me there so much, even though it was a very humble home. But I recognized that it was a beautiful time. And it was actually a beautiful time for her and I. Look, the 6th business worked. And I think a big part of why it did is because it started to be about other people other than myself. Ironically, it was a podcast. I started a podcast in a basement where grandma didn't have any internet. So I had to do the podcast, which I did 300 episodes of, in a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. So I did the Jake Sasseville show, which Huffington Post called the intersection of culture and consciousness, from a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. And within 3 months, I was making $10,000 a month from the podcast. I learned how to monetize podcasts in 2013 before people even knew how to say pod and cast.
Oh my
Wow.
God, this is amazing.
Isn't that good?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was a real podcast of service, right? So I had burned so many bridges in the past 10 years at that point that I started to, as part of my 12-step program, I started to call up and make amends to people. And then I'd be like, you want to be on my show? And then the show was a platform for them to share what was important to them. And these were, I mean, we had everybody on the show. Beyonce's publicist who had never spoken publicly. We had the first openly gay NFL athlete, owners of NBA teams. You know, when the riots were happening with in Ferguson, Missouri, I booked Nelson Mandela's grandson and Gandhi's grandson on the same show, and we had that conversation. Like, we were doing stuff that people had never even conceived of being possible in terms of conversation before. And I just pushed that envelope in the same way I always had, but now I pushed it in service to others. And it started to work.
Wow.
Wow, dude. Yeah, you're the podcaster before pod. Yeah, like you said.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, I didn't know this, but that's amazing.
And so are you still doing that?
I stopped at 300 episodes because it wasn't interesting to me anymore. And I'd like to pick it back up. And I'm looking at, especially now with all the incredible people that are coming to Imiloa, I mean, I'm looking to pick it back up, but in a very sort of dynamic, in a different kind of way, not on Skype. I was doing mine on Skype. Now Zoom is so much easier. Yeah. But, you know, doing it in person. But it got me to my next chapter. You know, it got me to the next chapter.
Right. Right. All these little steps that you were taking and failures have all got you to where you are now. That's so
Exactly. Slowly.
So
that's so cool. Okay. So then
you're like, what happens next? It's like a good story book, right?
Did you go to Hawaii next? I know you went to.
So here's what happened with Hawaii. You guys ready for this full circle moment?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm doing the podcast and I'm making some money. I mean, I don't even know how I'm making them. I'm just seeing these ad dollars flowing. And I'm like, what is happening? And so I'm like, I can't be in New York or LA because spiritually I was no longer in that vortex of like I wasn't interested in. I had really done some inner work, and I didn't really fit with the groups that I had there, New York or LA. So my friend one day, bless her heart, she reminded me, or she asked me, because I was really struggling with this, because I'm like, I guess I'm just going to live in the basement forever. Like, this is literally what I thought. I was like, just do the podcast with Dunkin' Donuts, live in the basement. I don't know. I was in such surrender about it all, honestly.
Wow.
And my friend said, Jakey, you remember that you loved my wedding on Maui. You loved Maui. And I said, are you insane? Nope. I live in a basement in a 900 square foot home. My grandmother is putting food in the fridge. I'm banking this money so that maybe I have a future. Nobody moves to Maui are you? It's the most expensive island in the world. And she said, but use what you've learned. Take action, turn the results over. And I said, okay. So I looked for a house online on Craigslist. I found a great big house with a cottage in the backyard. And I said, can Airbnb the cottage and make money and be able to pay for the house? The house was $5,000. I had no business applying for it. I had a 420 credit score at the time. I applied for the house. I called my sponsor in my 12-step program because I'm having a total attack. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm applying for this house. I have a 420 credit score. I just pulled the credit score. She's like, hey, just take the action, turn the results over. That was the resounding sort of. Then I get a call 2 weeks later from a woman named Netta, who ended up becoming my property manager. And this was to rent the house. This was not to buy it. It was $5,000 a month in the nicest part of Maui. I didn't know that at the time.
Wow.
And she said, hey, Jake, it's Netta. You know, everybody in Hawaii, they sing their words. Hey, Jake, it's Netta. I said, hi, Netta. How you doing? Oh, aloha, I'm doing okay. She's calling me to deny me. She's like, just wanted to let you know, you can have the house if you want it. Let me know, bye. And I was like, I can have the house if I want it? What does that mean? How are these people talking to me? Am I just like, so I moved to Hawaii 40 days later. I shipped my stuff. I put my deposit. I did a one-way ticket. I said goodbye to everybody in Maine. I had created a whole community. I really filled my life with service and community activities. And I moved to Hawaii, scared shitless, by the way. A 4,000 square foot home. Are you insane? How was I going to furnish this place? What was I going to do? I didn't have the money. I had money for 2 months worth of rent and then goodbye. Like, what was I going to do? I get to Hawaii, have a total panic attack when I go to Walmart and I see spatulas for sale for $8. And I'm like, Walmart is like where I go, where my white trash friends go to shop for things cheap on the wrong side of the tracks. How is there a spatula for $8? Have a total meltdown in the aisle. Call my friend in Australia who told me to do this in the first place. You know, I'm like, what? Like, I'm going back. And then she reminded me, she says, you can't go back. You've already shipped all your stuff. I go to meet Netta. I go to the house. I'll never forget it. It's empty. I bought a screen. I bought an air mattress, a spatula, a pan, and some eggs. I don't know what I was thinking. I was clearly delirious. And I laid down on that carpet on the air mattress, and I went to sleep. And I woke up, and I was like, a lot of cortisol was like. I woke up, and I walked outside, and I see this volcano behind me, and I see the ocean in front of me, and it's Hawaii and it's Maui, so it's, you know, that whole thing. And I'm up at 3,000 feet in elevation looking over 3 Hawaiian islands. And I hear someone talking, and I look across the street in a little, you know, like a little 4x4 dune buggy. It's Oprah and Gail. I said, what is happening to my life right now?
Oh my God.
So then I asked the other neighbor, like I go meet the neighbor. Hi, it's Jake, da, da, da. I said, I just saw Oprah and Gail, I think, over there. Oh yeah, they're neighbors. I said, excuse me? Come again. I went from, they were on their summer vacation because I moved in August 27, 2015. I literally went from grandma's basement to Oprah's neighbor overnight.
Oh my God. That would have been like a dream come true.
It blew me away. It blew me away. Because of course, who did I watch every day at 4 when my brother was going through the whole thing? Oy. I furnished my cottage. I put it on Airbnb on September 7th, 2015. And it never was empty for a night. That cottage earned plenty of money, double what I needed for the house in my life on Maui. I used it as an opportunity to transition back into real life. And because I had a big old house upstairs, I had extra bedrooms. So I started to invite people to my house to do whatever they needed to do. I didn't charge them. I was just like, I was living in like this unbelievable abundance. And that's when I realized, having thousands of people at my home in Maui over 3 years, that's when I got the idea. And I realized people, human beings, want to feel at home in their transformation. And that's when I created Imiloa.
Oh, that is so beautiful.
Awesome.
And tell us what Imiloa means.
Imiloa was named by a Hawaiian elder because I spoke of this vision for 3 years nonstop. I thought it was going to be in Hawaii. I was telling everybody I was looking for money. I was like, I need a retreat center, da, da, da. And when I was speaking with someone else about the visions, it was a gathering, like a Festivus gathering thing in Maui. And this old Hawaiian woman came up to me and she pointed at me and she said, what you speak of is Imiloa. And I thought, what does that mean? And it means creativity and exploration driven by wonder and imagination. Creativity and exploration driven by wonder and imagination.
Beautiful.
And so Imiloa was formed.
This is amazing. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm like in a dream listening to your life.
Watching a movie, you know? Like,
It's very dreamy, you guys. I have to tell you, it's dreamy and it's otherworldly. And then when people come to Imiloa, knowing, well, now you guys know everything that's been infused into that. And look, it's a canvas. I created the canvas. So many people paint on the canvas now, right? It's hardly my vision. It's an expanded global. But the essence of it, the magic of it, the daringness of it, the wild yet safe aspects that people feel in that jungle here in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. It's makes sense when you hear this, because it's like, oh yeah, that everything came forward to birth that thing, which is hardly to do with me. You know, I'm just taking action and turning the results over to a higher power.
Right. Oh, yeah. Amazing. And so how did you end up creating it in Costa Rica?
Yeah.
So one thing I've learned about Imiloa, which could be said for anybody that's creating anything in the world, is that if it actually wants to be, it will find a way to be. And that's, again, not meant to sound woo-woo. We were about to close on a Maui home. We raised, oh, by the way, okay, so then I meet a business partner, and all of a sudden he gets inspired, but only after me pitching him 4 times this Imiloa thing. And finally, after 4 times, he's like, let me put a post on Facebook. He had a couple of exits from some companies, whatever. Overnight, we raised $100,000 for Imiloa. So we're like, okay, I guess that this is going. And over the next 6 months, we raised $2.5 million for Imiloa without anything, with no business plan, no Excel sheet. People just saying, we're in, we love this. This is a global vision for the advancement of humanity. And so we put an offer in on a beautiful Hawaii property. And at the 11th hour, quite literally, before, you know, in Hawaii, there's a thing, if you ever bought real estate, it's called a J1, which means when you pass the J1, it's the point of no return in a real estate transaction, right? So it was whatever day it was, but I sat straight up in bed. I was in Maine visiting family, 4 a.m. in the morning, and I was sweating, and I was like, oh my God, we can't do this. And the reason why was because there was too many loopholes that we were exploiting. Retreat centers in Maui are not very welcomed, and we were exploiting a lot of loopholes in order to be able to get it done. And I just I couldn't do it. So 6 hours behind Maine, 10 p.m. in Maui, I called Dana, bless her heart. I said, pull me out of the deal. I had 2 hours before midnight before I could be pulled out. I said, pull me out of the deal. And then I called my partner in Israel, 6 hours ahead of me, because it was 10 a.m. there. And I was like, I pulled us out of the deal. He's like, you got to be effing kidding me. We have $2.5 million in the bank. What is wrong with you? I said, I had a premonition. I woke up in bed sweating. He says, well, you better go cool off, and you better figure out what you're going to do by the time the sun rises. Because he wasn't really, you know, he was raising the money, and I was like the visionary. And I was like, well, we have this vision of an intercontinental institute. Costa Rica was our second continent. So I bought a ticket to Costa Rica from Maine, whatever I did, and I called every real estate agent that had a reputable name behind their name, like Coldwell and Remax, and, you know, and I said, who wants to make the fastest commission of their life? And nobody answered except for 2 people. One person, Larry from New Jersey. Larry, I'll never forget it. I said, Larry, I need as many properties with 20 acres, with this, and that, and I need to meet all the sellers, and I'm coming to Costa Rica in 48 hours. And he lined up 3 properties, and where Imiloa now is was the first property that we saw. We made an offer, and I moved 49 days later.
Oh.
And the house.
The house?
Yeah, up in the mountain.
In Maui?
No,
Imiloa. Yeah, so Imiloa is made up of many homes on the property, right?
Yeah, which I didn't realize how unique that was in the retreat world. But basically, when we bought the property, it's 22 acres, top of the mountain, end of the road, out on the edge of the cliff. And it had 3 200-year-old homes from Bali there. And originally, we were going to do a couple of little jewel box, additional tiny homes around the property. But then I started selling retreats. I got here June 1, 2018. I had another business partner. She started kind of construction and that whole thing. And I started selling 30-person retreats. So I was like, well, shit, we're going to have to build a lot more than just, and she's like, what do you mean? I said, let's go. Yahtzee, you know, let's go. We got to do something. So all of a sudden we have 6 bungalows. I have domes coming in from Warsaw, Poland. Why Warsaw? Because I chose the worst winter environment that I could think of. Russia didn't have a dome company, so I went to Poland so I went to Poland. I started calling dome companies in Poland. Found this company, F Domes. They ship domes over. I'm building bungalows with bathtubs in the sloth sanctuary. I mean, and we went over budget, crazy amounts. But I kept booking contracts. People kept having the appetite and the desire, and I didn't even know what they were having an appetite for at the beginning, you guys. I think you guys were contract maybe 70, 60. I don't remember which number contract you were. But in the first 3, 5, 10 contracts, I was like, what do these people see? We didn't even have a mission and vision statement. I mean, I did kind of, but not really. It just, when you are in this flow, and people talk a whole lot about flow state and they sell courses on flow state. But there's something when you're in this flow, things just shroom, shroom, shroom. They just keep working. And Imiloa at every step, and believe me, that thing could have fallen over many times. I don't mean the actual structures. I mean the entire business, right? I mean, at one point we almost were Fire Fest. Do you guys know Fire Festival in the Bahamas? The documentary about the retreat that was done in the Bahamas, and they pre-sold everything, and then the whole thing fell over the first day of the event. We literally had trucks that installed like major parts of the campus and the domes driving down the hill as a group of SUVs were coming up for check-in. I mean, it was wow. It was tight. It was tight. We built 12 homes in 8 months in the Costa Rican jungle in the rainy season.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. You can tell why I need a break. I need a sabbatical. I'm like, Daddy's tired. Okay, Daddy's tired. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So, okay. So when are you going to take a break?
Yeah, when are you going to take a break?
You know, I think I've slowed down a lot. COVID brought up a lot for me. I actually, 2 of my business partners exited the company, the CEO and the COO. I was just the sales guy, and I had to step in to being CEO, which nearly took me under because things were really surprising when I got into CEO. Just things that, you know, with a startup aren't always looked after in the way that they need to be. I never wanted to be CEO. I said no 3 times. The shareholders, the investors were like, you got to take it. And I was like, Daddy's not a CEO. I sell things for a living. I create magic in people's lives. I do not run this. And they're like, either do it or we need to sell. And I was like, huh? And it wasn't a great, what'd you say, Cisco?
No, I just like, whoa. I was like, whoa. I was just like, whoa. You said take it. They told you to take it.
Yeah, you got to take it. And because remember, we were the only, because we stayed open because I kept saying that we needed to stay open. We were the only place in Costa Rica to not fire a soul and to not close during COVID. I mean, the only hospitality place to not fire a soul and not close during COVID. I mean, so, and that was my suggestion because I figured we would come back stronger than before, which I was right, but it was not a popular opinion when the borders were closed and people were like, huh? So they were like, you got to take it. You got to do it. And I was like, whoa. So it was huge, guys. It's been a really interesting year. I have the most amazing team in place now, though. I stabilized every aspect of the company. I'm working on the third aspect with investors and finance right now. But, you know, I stabilized sales. I stabilized operations. Both of them were totally upside down during COVID, especially with the departure of these 2 key executives. And now I'm stabilizing the third part. And I think there's a break in my future. I don't know what it looks like. As I hire the most amazing team, both on the ground and around the world, that in of itself is a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
The fact that I can say yes to doing a podcast interview at 6:00 on a Monday and actually want to do it and be in the headspace to do it, I could not have said yes in the last 11 months. It was that kind of shaky. So yeah, thanks for asking. It's good reflection for me to think about when that break will be, because I think I'll need some sort of break at some point.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. But it sounds like you've created this amazing place, and we're so thankful that we were drawn to you and Imiloa. I mean, I remember the first meeting I had with you, and you just cracked me up. Your just energy drew me in, and I was like, yes, I'm doing this. Like, yes, I'm doing this.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful. I mean, I feel like in many ways this was reciprocated by doing this conversation with the three of us. I think that I hope it's valuable for your listeners and obviously for you two, but I also hope that it's valuable for potentially even other retreat hosts at Imiloa who are looking to understand the magic that they've walked into and why, we don't just believe in people like our life depends on it. We believe in people because our life depends on it. We love, because people believed in me and in Imiloa when it was not popular to do so. And that's why we believe anything is possible. We've seen retreat hosts, a retreat host in January wanted to cancel this past year. He had a retreat in April. He had 1 ticket sold in January. It was 2 months before the retreat, 2.5 months. And we said, you can cancel, but you're going to lose all your money. And he would, per the contract, right? And we just watched him turn it around. 25 people attended his retreat, and he renewed during the actual retreat. So I really believe in these miracles because I'm a living embodiment of it. And I choose to believe in people because, you know what, you guys, I believe that it's the most cost-efficient thing that we can do, and really a birthright to just believe in others. People that are critical of other people, not believing in them, it doesn't cost anything to believe in people. And I think it's so valuable and so underrated in society. It's almost not attractive, not cute if you like just believe in someone on their way up. Like no matter what environment it's in. It's something that I really, I've had the good fortune of having, and along with a lot of luck and perseverance and chutzpah and a lot of other things. But yeah, believing in people, it's so cheap to do and so important and can literally transform the world. Like if people hadn't believed, if our lead investor hadn't been there when I was crying my eyes out last December, January, February, the guy's a billionaire in Zurich. He doesn't need to hear me crying like a baby, but he does need to hear me crying like a baby because then that way he could believe in me. And look what happened as a result of just believing, So
yeah, I definitely feel that from you. Yeah. That you really set your beliefs in people and that really raises them up. So I definitely get that from you. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you so much for doing this. Can you leave us with a few tidbits, maybe something that you do every day that helps you stay mentally balanced, and a book that you can recommend, because I know you're a reader.
Yes, I try, and I'm generally successful at not touching my phone for 2 to 3 hours in the morning, which is a deliberate act of self-care and often very difficult. I do a cold water plunge in my backyard, which really helps. There's obviously a ton of science now behind it in Wim Hof. I do a sauna every day. I do intermittent fasting, which means I generally eat for 6 hours a day. These are not like revolutionary things, but combined, it's really helped me settle over the last several months into my nervous system.
All right.
A book, of course. I'm actually moving. That's why everything's packed, and so I can't turn around and reference what I'm reading right now. And I'm trying to think of what a great book is. If you give me 30 seconds.
Okay, I know you mentioned The Seat of the Soul on one of your posts, and I love that book.
Oh my God, Gary Zukav. That book was a while ago, and I happened to be in a thing with him recently. I love The Seat of the Soul, and what I'm reading right now is Letters to My White Male Friends. I believe that, the issue, Letters to My White Male Friends is written by a guy named Dax, Dax Ross. And I thought I was an ally to Black and brown folks and the challenges that they're facing. And then I started reading this book, and I realized I got a ways to go. So that's the book that I recommend people read.
Interesting. All right, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
This has been such an inspiring conversation.
Thank you for me as well. I really appreciate it.
Like when you said earlier, you're like, man, I've always worked for myself. Never. That's me. I've been working for myself since I was 20 years old. It's like I'm, I know where you're coming from.
And you don't know anything different, right?
No, I just know how to get out there, and when the time comes and you have to do it, you have to do it. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is inspiring.
There's a lot of relation there, on what you were talking about, what you did, and then, my story too. So
I'm so looking forward to meeting you guys in person.
Yes, I can't wait. I am so ready to get away and just be immersed and stuff and feeding off of people that are ready to learn and grow. This is going to be amazing.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Yay. You're
Thanks
welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Okay,
right.
well, we'll meet you soon, Jake.
Yay, bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Oh my God. And that Oprah story just I was like, what? He lived in a basement. Then he's living in this nice house on Maui and Oprah's his neighbor. Just reminded me of like I remember I used to watch Oprah every day and be like, man, I wanna meet Oprah one day. I'd always say that. I want to meet Oprah. But now I'm so surpassed her